So honest, yeah. But one of the questions that I was asked was, you've been learning Chassidus your whole life. How has Chassidus changed you? That was the question I was asked. It's a very legitimate question. I'm teaching Chassidus as a career for 35 years. That's what I do. I teach Chassidus, yeah? So she asked me, you've been learning and teaching Chassidus your whole life. How has Chassidus changed you? Now, what's the truth of the matter? What is the truth of the matter? Okay, if a person learns Chassidus, does Chassidus change them? I'm asking you a question.
Yeah.
Okay, all of these voices, everybody is right. You're all 1,000% correct. Okay? But let me sort of voice what all of you are saying. Chassidus works when you work on yourself. What we call in our culture avodah. And avodah ultimately means, again, what we call in our culture avodas hatfila, davening. And it's more than davening. You don't just daven, right? You think about yourself. You examine midas rois. Midas rois. I have a lot of midas rois. We all have midas rois. Some people have worse midas beteva. Some people have better midas beteva. But all of us, whether we have good midas or bad midas, they're midas tivias, right? Lishanes midas afativim. Even if you have good midas, you didn't work on these midas. You didn't develop these midas. You were born with these midas. And Chassidus works. Chassidus was meant to work. When the Alter Rebbe made Chassidus, when the Rabbeim made Chassidus, Chassidus was meant to be avodah. Chassidus was meant to be a person working on himself, and the maimer, and the siche, and the vart teaches them how to work on themselves, what's expected of themselves, how they should grow. And as has come up in these classes in the last couple of times we sat together, it brings a light, it brings a joy into avodah. What happens if the person just learns Chassidus? Just learns Chassidus. In other words, for whatever reason, and it's never a good reason, if a person learns Chassidus, a tutishtan avodah, you know? The previous Rabbeim used to say, the earlier Rabbeim used to say, if you learn Chassidus and not do avodah, you're not allowed to learn. The Friedrich Rebbe said that. And if the Friedrich Rebbe said it, the Rebbe Rashab certainly said it, and the Rebbe Marash certainly said it, and Tzemach Tzedek said it with 4 certainties, and so on. You understand what I'm saying? There's actually a sicha from our Rebbe. It's very interesting. Because it's a davar yadua, it's well known, that the Rebbe used to sit next to the Friedrich Rebbe. He was his son-in-law. He sat at the Shabbos meals, with the Friedrich Rebbe. Mamish ke'avda kamimora. The Rebbe sat next to the Friedrich Rebbe like a slave sits in front of his master. The Rebbe sat next to the Friedrich Rebbe even after Yud Shvat, after the Friedrich Rebbe passed away. When the Rebbe would sit at the table of the Friedrich Rebbe, and he did it for 20 more years until the Rebbe Tzedakah Medina passed away. The Rebbe sat in his seat, where the Friedrich Rebbe sat at the head of the table. The Rashag sat here on the right side, the Rebbe sat here on the left side. And the Rebbe sat next to the Friedrich Rebbe, mamish, he didn't move a muscle. It was Shut Shabbos, so the Rebbe ate, the Rebbe made Kiddush, the Rebbe washed. But the Rebbe sat in front of the Friedrich Rebbe with such bittul, he never opened his mouth. But there is a collection, there's a guy made many years ago, a sefer called Yemei Melech, and he collected a handful of occasions when the Rebbe actually spoke up out of Fabrengen of the Friedrich Rebbe. It was very unusual. By the Friedrich Rebbe's Fabrengens, in contrast to our Rebbe's Fabrengens, when the Rebbe Fabreng, no one said a word. Nobody sat next to the Rebbe. The Rebbe sat in the middle of the table. The person closest to him was Rabbi Chadakov, who was like 10 feet to his left. The Rashag sat at the head of the table, which was maybe, depending on how big the shul was, either 5 feet away, or 10 feet away, or 15 feet away. And when Rabbi Yolos came, he sat on the Rebbe's right. The Rebbe didn't sit next to anybody. And when the Rebbe Fabreng, he was a one-man show. The Rebbe did his own thing. And the Pashat, the reason for this is because the Rebbe knew that there's nobody who could sit next to him. The Rebbe's Nesias is so interesting. The Rebbe was Pashat of one-man show. When the Friedrich Rebbe Fabreng, people sat right near him. And he talked to people. It was intimate. It was more intimate. And people used to ask questions, and that's Baklal how Fabrengen were. By the Rebbe, no one opened their mouth. Even when the Rebbe asked people to open their mouth, they were afraid to speak. So the Frierdiker Rebbe was sitting in a Fabrengen, in his house in New York. I don't know what year it was, 1948, 1947, 1949, the last few years before Yud Shvat. And he said what I just told you. That Chassidus was created for Avodah. And Avodah means being an Amidus. Avodah means working on your character. Avodah means becoming a better person. You know, Avodah has a last name. Does anybody even know? And I hate to say that because maybe many of you do know. Does anybody know what Avoidah's last name is? Huh? Avodah Hashem. No. That's Avoidas. What's Avodah in Chabad? Avodah has a last name. Huh? Avodah. Good answer, but that's the one I'm looking for.
Pain and heart.
The second word after Avodah is the word Pnimis. Avodah Pnimis. Avodah Pnimis. Avodah Pnimis means working on internal things. You're not just working on what you do, you're working on your character. Chabad is a deep Chassidus. But Chassidus Chabad is only a Chassidus if we work on ourselves. Now, it's become, and I think it's how the Rebbe wants it. I don't think this is wrong entirely. Today, to be an Ovid, I mean, what's a Lubavitcher today? What's a Lubavitcher today? A Lubavitcher today works. And he delivers. How does he deliver? I mean, the magic word in Lubavitcher today is shlichus. And shlichus is very hard. Shlichus is mesiras nefesh. Shlichus is sacrifice. You move away from your family. I need your attention, please, if we're closing the doors, okay? Your choice. If we're keeping the doors open, you got to look over here. If I see your faces looking over there, we're going to sit in the sauna. Okay, so give me your attention, please. Today, Chassidim today are Chassidim because they give to others. When people move to remote villages or cities or countries where there's no Yiddishkeit, there's no kashas, there's no shul, there's no friends for their children, and they give to other people, that's not less avoida than a person who's worried about his midas reis, who lived 150 years ago in a shtetl in Russia. But the avodah is radiated outward. Now, the Rebbe says, work. You want to be makad of yourself, be makad of somebody else. He said it in the first Maimer. And that's really what we do, right? What makes you a Lubavitcher? What you do. Hopefully what you do will be so much that it'll correct you also, right? I'm a teacher. I have to be so busy with my teaching that it should be mavad my midas, that somehow it's not just that I work to be mashpia on other people or to teach Chassidus, whatever it was. And that was the question I was asked. How has Chassidus changed you? And I didn't have a very good answer. Because I have midas reis. I have a lot of midas reis. I would like to believe that in all my life, I've a little bit worked on midas reis, but I have midas reis. And midas reis is not a good thing. Midas reis hurts people. Working on yourself means identifying your midas reis and correcting them. Whatever midas reis it is, whether it's anger, whether it's judgmentalism, whether it's not being nice to people. They're midas reis, yeah? So in the olden days, a Chabad Chassid, who was a serious Chabad Chassid, worked on himself, and I'm going to repeat the phrase again, called Avodah Pnimis. You worked on your concentration in davening, you worked on your relationship with the Eibishter, you worked on self-control, you worked on iskafia. Every action should be measured. You don't waste time, you don't waste money, you don't waste things. You're involved in serving the Eibishter. And you work on your character. Avodah. And if you learn lots and lots of Chassidus. You know, I saw a sikha from the Frierdiker Rebbe, which is really upsetting. The Frierdiker Rebbe said that the last few years of his life, to the American boys, to the American Bacharim, which I am one of, yes? I'm just 80 years later, or 50 years later. He says, you know more Chassidus than the Bacharim knew in Russia. You know, he told the American Bacharim, you know more Chassidus than you in Russia. But me kennen alle the Ames nicht stehen, es stinkt von einer midas reis. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, people can't stand next to you. Your midas reis stink. You're bad. He told this to the Bacharim, to their face. I had a midas stinking. In other words, you're learning Chassidus. What Chassidus learning you? You know, the Frierdiker Rebbe used to say, in Yiddish, it's a pun that works. Du lernst Chassidus, was hat dir Chassidus ausgelernt? You're learning Chassidus, what did Chassidus teach you? So somebody asked me that question straight up. So all these years you're learning Chassidus. No, so what came of you from learning Chassidus? Well, my whole life is Chassidus. But is that how a Chassid is supposed to look? You're a Mendel Futterfass said once. The Mendel Futterfass that it wasn't a Fabrengen. That the Rebbe asked him to sit behind him. The Rebbe used to stand on the floor, the Rebbe to sit behind him. So that Mendel laughed and he said, Amol, sagt na, weg setzen Menschen hinter den Rebbe, man sagt sagen, sollst du euch sein. Heinz setzt man weg hinter den Rebbe, man sagt, sollst du dich da sein. You understand Yiddish? He says, in the olden days, they put people behind the Rebbe and say, you should look like them. Now they put people behind the Rebbe and say, you see that guy? Don't be like him. That's what the Mendel said. The Mendel put the bus. Why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing this up? I'm not bringing this up because I did this interview last night, although the interview portion kept me up all night. It's very interesting. I'm bringing this up because our Maimed is talking about something which says something very different. What does our Maimed say? Chassidus is mevarer b'derech oyer. Now I'm going to ask a question and I want an honest answer. Let's say there's 40 girls in this room, I don't know the exact number, right? Do you understand what I just said? Chassidus, if there's any person in this room who does not understand what I said, I want to explain it. Chassidus is mevarer b'derech oyer. Chassidus corrects through light. Is there anybody in this room who needs this explained? Kinderlach, don't be afraid of me. Be afraid of your own ignorance. Thank you for being honest. I appreciate it. Chassidus is mevada b'derech oyer means that there is a concept, at least a partial concept, where even if a person doesn't work on himself. Oh wait, I'll get back to you in a second. I forgot the end of the story. This is very important. This is very, very important. Now I'm wasting your time. I agree I'm wasting your time, but this is the time you're supposed to waste. The Friedrich Rebbe was sitting by a table in New York. And the Friedrich Rebbe said at a Fabrengen that if a person learns Chassidus and he doesn't daven, doesn't work in his midas, he's not allowed to learn Chassidus. You have no permission if you're not going to work on becoming a better person, if you're not going to work on your own character, if you're not going to work on your own midas tavis, don't learn Chassidus. So our Rebbe, who was sitting, if the Friedrich Rebbe was sitting here, the Rashag was sitting here, the Rebbe is sitting here, spoke up, and he almost never opened his mouth. And the Rebbe says to the Friedrich Rebbe, Favos, why? Why shouldn't it be like Nigler? When it comes to Torah, what do we say about Limud HaTorah? About Limud HaTorah we say, Hamoer Shabo Machazire Lemutiv. Translate. In the Torah you have Moed, which means the Eibishter. And if a person learns Torah and they have no intention of doing mitzvahs, they have no intention of refining their character, they have no intention of becoming a better person, Torah lifts you up. So the Rebbe asked the Friedrich Rebbe, and the Friedrich Rebbe said, if you're going to learn Chassidus, and you're not going to do Avodah, right? Does anybody remember Avoidah's last name? Primus. If you're not going to do it, you better don't learn. So the Rebbe says, why? If when a person learns Nigler, the Torah lifts a person up, so Chassidus Shah lifts a person up. And the Friedrich Rebbe gave the Rebbe a very odd answer. He didn't really answer him. What's the pshat? It's a 3-ring circus. It's a middle of class mamish. I don't get it. How could this happen? Forget about closing the doors. Why is the music going on?
Somebody made a mistake.
You're kidding. Okay, you can reopen the doors on Machon. One second. So the Rebbe says to the Friedrich Rebbe, are you all listening to me? The Rebbe says to the Friedrich Rebbe, if you're not going to do Avodah Pnim, you shouldn't learn. The Friedrich Rebbe says, if you're not going to daven, you're not going to work on your mitzvahs, don't learn Chassidus. And the Rebbe says, why not? You'll learn Chassidus, you'll learn enough of it that'll lift you up, it'll refine your character, it'll make you better, and so on and so forth. So the Friedrich Rebbe told the Rebbe the following words. There was an old chassid named Rabbi Yossi Paltiel. Rabbi Yossi Paltiel was a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. The Friedrich Rebbe knew him. He was an old man. The Friedrich Rebbe was a younger man. He was a very great chassid. He was a moidendike oivet. Rabbi Yossi Paltiel had an incredible brain, a moidendike cup. But Geshem Ber was also a very big oived. He was the chassid who used to say, you've heard this many times from your teachers, tomorrow will be better than today. And by him, every day was Paltiel that way. Morgan was Aishena behind. And he did it for Paltiel. The guy lived well into his 70s. And he was an incredibly great man. He had a very big head. And he would say every night after Krishma, tomorrow will be better than today. And it was Paltiel mamish that way. It was a real serious chassid. And Rabbi Yossi Paltiel used to say, when you would ask him a question, and he would answer it, and you would ask him a question, and he would answer it, and you would ask him a question, until he couldn't answer anymore, he would say, Azoy. Azoyederingen. Azoy. Azoy, which means in English, it's just the way it is. You don't understand, I can't explain it, that's Azoy, Azoy. So the Rebbe asks the Friedrich Rebbe, our Rebbe asks the Friedrich Rebbe, if a person learns Chassidus and doesn't do Avodah, why is that? Why is it better that he shouldn't learn Chassidus? If you learn Nigle, and Hamor Shabbat Machzir Lamut of Torah lifts you up, the Koshken Vakavachem Hamish Mosa, a person learns Chassidus, the Chassidus should lift you up. Why should a person not learn Chassidus if he's not going to do an avoid? And the Friedrich ever told him, good, that's just the way it is. That's just the rules. Azoy, he didn't answer him. He didn't explain why Chassidus is different than Nigla. He simply said, that's how it is. Now, I'm going to say humbly, and now I'm a thin branch, the Rebbe asked the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe answered the Rebbe, but I think the Rebbe believes what he asked. I think you want to call the generations. There's no doubt in my mind, there's mamish no doubt in my mind, that the Rebbe holds, let a person learn Chassidus even if he's not going to do mitzvahs. The Rebbe doesn't have a problem. The Friedrich Rebbe said, if you're not going to do avodah, don't learn. The Rebbe asked the Friedrich Rebbe, why not? And the Friedrich Rebbe told him, that's just the way it is. Personally, I hold, and it's just my opinion, that the Rebbe holds like he is questioned. In other words, the Rebbe Taka disagrees with the Friedrich Rebbe. Chochafilu, the Rebbe has so much bittul, but it's not the pshat the Rebbe is disagreeing with the Friedrich Rebbe. The Rebbe is pushed it in a different generation. So we get back to the original point. If a person learns Chassidus, und tut nicht an avoida, doesn't work on himself, and avoida could be a lot of things. Anything that a person does, a person goes on shlichus. I'm going to be direct. A person goes on shlichus, and he does the shlichus with Mesiras Nefesh. He's completely dedicated to shlichus. He'll become a chassid. He's not working on himself, but he is working on himself because he's pushing himself to the limit. If a person relaxes and takes vacations and takes naps, that's another story. But if a person has a shlichus, it doesn't matter what the shlichus is. If you do your shlichus to the fullest extent possible, even though you're not working directly on yourself, you're not doing avodah pnimis, you're doing hafotza, but in that work, you will also work yourself. You'll also be mevada yourself, you see. But what happens if a person learns Chassidus? Chassidus alone. What kind of bida does Chassidus have? If you learn enough Chassidus, will you stop being angry? If you learn enough Chassidus, will you learn how to be kind to other people? I'm going to ask you a really tough one. If you learn Chassidus, will you learn how to keep your mouth shut? You know how that works. Yeah. You say the stupid thing, you say, I shouldn't have said it. And then again, the next day, you say the stupid thing, you say, I shouldn't have said it, right? But do you imagine actually not saying it? If you taka don't say it, that's a birur. You see what I'm saying? That's a birur. We're learning a maimed that's comparing us to Yankov Avinu. That's what we're doing. We are learning a maimed chassidus. You're all sitting here. And we're sitting here, I'm going fast. We're learning this semester a lot faster than last semester. It's not because I changed. The maimed is easier. We are learning a maimed that's describing a scenario that says, our birur is malmata lamayla. We fix ourselves by getting into the trenches. We have midas rois, we have laziness, we have taivas. I think the worst klipa that our generation faces, and I don't think it's our generation, but for sure in our generation, I tell you all the time, is bad habits. The things that we do wrong, we don't even see us doing it because we've done them so many times. Whatever it is. Bad habits, hergelim royim, bad habits is a very difficult thing to correct. First of all, you have to notice it. And then you have to break it. It's so hard to break a habit because you're so used to using that example again, saying the stupid thing and then saying, I probably should have kept my mouth shut. You do it over, and you do it over, and you do it over, and you do it over. When does it finish? So the Maimon says our avodah is to work on ourselves. And working on ourselves is from the bottom up. But Torah, Lashon Hira, if it's written in Torah, is a lesson to us. So there is a place for each one of us to do the birur of Yankov Avinu. Now, how was Yankov Avinu mavared? By learning Chassidus. Yankov Avinu learned Chassidus and the world became a better place. You know why? Because Yankov Avinu inside of himself was so clear, was so mavuded, that his light changed the world. But we're not Yankov Avinu. We're Shmendidik number XY42 LO70770 at the end. It makes everything kosher. Yeah. Yeah. But the Rebbe, we're learning a maimed that's saying, "Be mevada yourself with that." Now the girl who normally sits here bothers me, and why? She said, "Excuse me, it doesn't work for me. This is the regular conversation. I don't understand it. It doesn't work for me. It's good." This is her. I don't even know her name, but I'm sorry. I'm talking about her before now. But if she's not here, I can get away with saying anything I want, right? There's nobody here to tell me I'm wrong. But I planned the class around the fact that someone's going to sit in the front row and say, "Rabbi Paltiel, you're beating a kettle. The haks, the chaynik, what are you talking about?" But the Maimed girls is describing you and me, us, becoming better people simply by learning Chassidus. And the language of the Maimed is birur b'derech hayir. You learn about Alakus. You learn about the Eibishter and the presence of the Eibishter, and to say it in perhaps a more worldly level, the goodness in the world, the positivity of life, and it's supposed to lift you up. It's supposed to make you a better person. So somebody asked me last night, point blank, "You're learning Chassidus for 45 years, at least 45 years. It's my bar mitzvah, more than 45 years. Yeah, no. So what did Chassidus do for you?" I tried to be honest, but what I said was pretty pathetic, because today, not when I was 15, I was mavada my midas. I keep my mouth shut when I should, more than I used to, but not nearly enough. I don't get angry. I don't hurt people's feelings. I do it all the time. I sometimes even realize I'm doing it, which is usually how midas always work. You're not sensitive. To have midas tavis, you have to work on yourself. And some people are born with natural midas tavis. And even if you're born with natural midas tavis is teva. It's not righteous, it's your nature. So you're a sweet person, you're a likable person. But if you're midas or midas tiviyim, this chesenis, midas tiviyim are klipa. And a person has to be bevaded as midas. Lishanes midas of ativim. Lishanes teva midas, right? The talk we know. We're experts on the philosophy, right? The question is, what do we do with it? Here's a maimed that says there's a birur b'derech hayir, a person that fixes himself in a way of life. Now, girls, you must understand. The Rebbe means what he's saying. The Rebbe means what we're learning. The next whole Perek, Perek Ches, and Perek Tes, and Perek Yud, are going to continue a conversation, right? We learned in the Perek Zayin, which I davened up very quickly, and I'm very happy I did it, because I don't want this maimed to be dominated by the details. He said, he gave us 4 examples in Torah where you have both Milchama and Shalom. In Nistir and in Nigla and in Chumash and in Teresh and B'Ksav of Chassidus. Remember that class, right? 4 examples where each one has both Milchama and Shalom. And then he finished Perek Zayin with the words Avo B'Klolos. And he goes back to the original point. What's the original point? When you're learning Nigla the Torah, you're learning Torah at a level where you're struggling with the world. When you're learning Pnimis Torah, you're learning Torah at a level of Oyer. Lichtigkeit. And if a person learns Torah on a level of what happens to him or her? What happens to him or her? According to this maimed, it's supposed to lift you up. It's supposed to refine you. It's supposed to change you. But the real truth of the matter is that if a person wants Chassidus to work, they have to work on themselves. Which means it's a combination. Right? You do what Yankov Avinu did, and you do what Shmendrik, number XY4, I forgot the numbers already, but 770, yeah. You have to work on yourself. If a person doesn't work on himself and learns lots of Chassidus, they're certainly better off than a person that doesn't learn Chassidus. But the degree of self-correction is going to be so limited. If a state was meret, you understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? This is what we're learning. So I want to say 2 things. First of all, the Rebbe is certainly describing the idea that just learning Chassidus lifts a person up. There's no doubt that's what the Rebbe means. Learning Torah, especially Pnimius Torah, lifts a person up. It refines a person. It brings. I learned Chassidus my whole life. I know how true that is. But to put it in practical words, I know the difference between a day that I learned in my Chassidus and a day that I didn't learn in my Chassidus. I'm not talking about preparing a class. Preparing a class is my job. It's my job. I get paid to do it. If I learn Chassidus on a certain day, I have a different day than a day that I don't learn Chassidus. It's a Metzias. Chassidus effect lifts a person up. It changes a person. But for Chassidus to be maximally effective, there needs to be, you have to work on yourself as well. But that's not the focus of the Maimed. The Maimed is focusing on learning Pnimius HaTorah, learning Chassidus, doing what Yankov Avinu did, and lifting yourself up. Go ahead.
I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself. Learning a mimer is in a right in itself. To fully understand and to learn and to internalizing is also part of the learning. So it's not something you can do and feel, oh, you have to learn and understand and maybe learn it 3 times before you fully get it.
Yeah. Now, God forbid, what happens if you get so smart and so good at it that you learn it that it's easy, at least easier, then what happens? Then you lose that. I get the point. I understand. What you're saying is accurate. You don't understand the Maimer, so you're working on understanding the Maimer, and there's a frustration in that. It's still not the same thing as focusing on the Midera. The next time I'm about to say something stupid, not I should say it and regret it, I shouldn't say it. That's Bidur Amidus. But fine, what you're saying is that when a person learns, because the Maimer is difficult, there's a frustration in learning the Maimer. I agree with that. Yeah, but over time, you get to the light of the Maimer quicker. The more Chassidus you learn, the more you understand. The more you understand, the more you appreciate the Maimer. The more you appreciate the Maimer, the less you work. The less you work, the less effective the Maimer is.
But it's the work.
It's okay. It's still work. Okay, I hear you. But it's yeah. But you're not working on yourself. You're working on understanding the Maimer. I'm not arguing with you. I'm really not. But
be working on patience. Like there is elements of the that could be worked on. Meaning it depends on you as a person, what you struggle with. But meaning learning a minor could actually be extra, like working on certain midas.
You think?
I think
Learning a Maimer is working on midas?
Like
Learning
you sit yourself down and to learn. For some people that.
In other words, you're working on not being lazy.
Yeah.
You're working on not wanting to feel stupid. Those are good things to work on. Self-control is kavya. I have to fight with it. Alas emes. It's all true. It's all true, but it's not the same thing as working on being nice to the girl in your class who you can't stand their guts since the 2nd grade. That's what midas usually means. We're all good with God, We don't have problems with God, problems with one another. From Yidden are very religious until it comes to the Jew sitting next to them. I love all Jews, but him I can't stand. Why? Because he's rotten. What makes him rotten? He's next to me.
So you're saying it might have been specifically for someone else?
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying she's wrong. You're both right. You're both right. You're absolutely right. But it's still limud. It's intellectual struggles. I'll tell it to you in Oisius of Klipa. What's the difference between you working hard on a Maimed and a Lahadl Elef Alfi Hados, a college student working hard on biology? You're working to understand, he or she is working to understand. You happen to be learning Teres Hashem, Elakus. They're learning Klipa. At the very least, it's Klipas Neged, maybe Gimel Klipas Meis, Verois Lagamre. But you're working on understanding something, right? You're working on yourself? Or you're working on understanding? Or to say it in fancy words, are you working in making yourself bigger, or are you working in making yourself smaller? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just pointing out that in the final analysis, learning Chassidus and not looking in the mirror and saying, where does Chassidus and me meet in my practical life, is on hold. It's not avoida pnimis. Avoida pnimis means I'm examining myself. Go ahead, talk loud.
You one time told us that Hasidim used to say that there's 3 things that for sure affect a person, and
right.
If they don't have enough of it, that just means they haven't done enough. It shows that if they say that means that their perspective wasn't, if Hasidus hasn't affected you, stop learning. The perspective was learn more.
Yeah, but the Rabbeim said.
it
Whatever.
seems like,
That's a very big word. Whatever. You got to find out what that whatever was.
what I'm saying is overall, you didn't like if somebody said like I want to learn. People like I feel like we don't really hear of it happening that like somebody said like, oh, I want to learn Chassidus, but like they're not fully certain if they're gonna take it practically. Like they still taught it to them and they hoped that it would uplift them. So
You should know that until Achei Temimim, they did not teach Chassidus to Bachrim. To Bachrim. You know what Lubavitch looked like before Achei Temimim? What Lubavitch looked like? Lubavitch was a shtetl. But the people who lived in Lubavitch were very poor people, very simple people. People came to Lubavitch to learn Chassidus, Darkei Chassidus. They were the greatest Jews in Russia. They were the Rabbonim, they were the Shachtim, they were the Malamdim. This simple Jew, the average Yid, didn't come to Lubavitch, and he learned very little Chassidus. Being a Chassid meant you daven from Nuschari, you went to Fabeng and Yitzchak, you sat in shul when they said, look at the Teira and Teira Air. You participated in the Malava Malkus and Chassidim homes, like it's described in the Yem. But the Chassidim who got Chabad would come to Lubavitch when they were married or older, in their 20s. And they would stay for a period of 6 months or a year, and during that time, they would learn what Chassidus is. They didn't just learn Maimorim. They learned how to daven. They learned how to look at themselves. In the olden days, Chabad Chassidus was for people with great minds and great hearts who were looking to serve Hashem and prepared to fight with themselves, which is the hardest thing. Achei Temimim introduced that concept to much younger people. And in Lubavitch, not all, by all means, not all the Bocharim did Avodah Pnimius, a percentage did Avodah Pnimius. It was what the Rebbe Rashab wanted, it was the ideal. The Bocharim in Lubavitch, you learned Nigla during Chassidus, with permission of the Anhola. They didn't kick you out because you didn't daven. That's not how it was. But the Rabbeim said, Chassidus was created for Avodah. If it's not going to be Avodah, don't do it. No, we don't practice that. We really don't. We learn.
They didn't practice it either. That's what I'm a little confused.
Okay, confusion is a sign of intelligence. Hastakasha, Chavish Kateretz, Hastakasha. I have a question. But the Rabbeim spoke this way consistently. And the earlier you'll go back, the stronger the message was. Chassidus is about Avodas Hashem. If Chassidus is not going to make you look at yourself critically and work on yourself, then you're wasting, you're being metamed Chassidus. That I really believe that Rebbe changed that. And you're arguing that it was different, that it was changed even then. Okay, so we have a historical debate. But the issue remains constant. What value is there in learning Chassidus if all there is learning? And the answer to the question is some value. Some value. But it's not nearly as effective when a person is working on himself. I think everybody can agree to what's being said here. Our Maimon is saying that even a regular person, that means you and I, who are avoida classically is birur mulmato l'mayla, our avoida is to correct ourselves from the bottom up. I just wasted an entire period. It's 11:30.
But if we all work on ourselves, it's not wasted.
If we work on ourselves, then it's maximized.
Yeah.
Oh, you've been talking about this 45 minutes. I'm going to be very, very, very cruel. This is such a selfish conversation. I'm talking to myself.
I think we're all talking to ourselves too.
But I'm the teacher. I'm being paid. Of course, what you just said is the truth. What you just said is the truth. And if you don't work on yourself, if you go into a bad mood, you go into a depression. We have so many excuses. Good ones, but excuses. For why we stop, you stop in the middle of the day, you stop in the middle of the week, you stop in the middle of the month, you stop in the middle of the semester, we all fall. We got to get back up and keep moving and fall and get back up and keep moving. Consistency is hard for us, even though it's basic to being a human being, got to be consistent. But somehow for us, we exhaust ourselves and we fall off the wagon and climb back onto the wagon and go a little further. So avoid is tricky. Avoid is tricky. But the Maimed is describing learning Chassidus just for the sake of it. And the Maimon is describing that when a person learns Chassidus just for the sake of it, the Chassidus lifts him up. The Maimon is clearly saying that even if you don't work on your midas, you just illuminate your life with the light of Chassidus. Chassidus is going to lift you up. It's going to lift you up. It's going to lift you up. It's going to lift you up. So I guess, you know what I just said in the last 36 minutes and 22 seconds? I didn't start on time. What I'm trying to say is, let's be honest about what we're learning. The Maimon is saying a truth. The Rebbe says this is emes. This is the truth. But appreciate the nuance of it. Appreciate the complication in it. The complication in it is that it's a part of a story. The Rebbe is teaching it as if it's a part of a story. This is the idea that Oir Chassidus is mevarer a mensch, and the light of Chassidus lifts a person up. And that's what we're learning. That's what we're learning. Let's learn. Okay, I got no time. Okay.